What is going on YouTube? This is the Middle School Math Man. This video is going to be on the general topic of quadratics, but more specifically we're going to talk about the axis of symmetry. So you should know the word symmetry already. It means basically the same on both sides. So I'm actually going to click through to this slide right here. Now, first we're going to define the axis of symmetry. I'm going to try to write it the best I can in this small amount of space. So it is the vertical line that divides the parabola into two equal parts. So we know with quadratics we're dealing with parabolas. It is a U-shaped graph. So the axis of symmetry is just the vertical line that divides it into two equal parts. And it has to be equal because it's symmetrical. So the formula for the axis of symmetry is x equals negative b over 2a. Now we're going to get to solving these by hand and using this little formula in a minute. But first I want to just look at it on a graph. So here I have an example of a graph. The axis of symmetry is the vertical line that divides the parabola into two equal parts. So one thing to know about the axis of symmetry is it's always going to go through the vertex. So in this problem, the axis of symmetry, if I were to draw it, is that line right there. So that is the vertical line that divides this parabola into two equal parts. As you can see, if we look at the two sides of the parabola, those are equal. They're the same. So that's the axis of symmetry. So the axis of symmetry is always written as x equals some number. And that number is where it is crossing through the x-axis. So the axis of symmetry is crossing right there on the x-axis, which, if I erase here, you can see is at negative 8. So the axis of symmetry here would just be represented as x equals negative 8. Let's take a look at this problem. The axis of symmetry is dividing this parabola. It's going through the vertex. And as you can see, it is crossing the x-axis at negative 10. So the axis of symmetry for this problem is written as x equals negative 10. Now let's go ahead and take a look at this equation again. X equals negative b over 2a. There's a little part here on vertex. When a vertex is the lowest point, so that would be an example like this problem. The vertex is the lowest point on the graph, right here in green. There's nothing below that point. That vertex is called a minimum. When the vertex is the highest point, so an example like this, here is the vertex. There's nothing above that point on this graph, so that would be called a maximum. Fairly self-explanatory, but just something to keep in mind. Alright, let's look at the first example. So this y equals x squared plus 8x plus 15, that is in standard form. So we know that the first number, the number in front of the x squared, is a. The number in the middle, that is the b. And finally, the last number is c. So if we look at the axis of symmetry equation, we have x equals negative b over 2a. So in this problem, b is 8. So negative b would be negative 8 over 2a. Now a in this case, there is no number for a, so that means it is just 1. So if I were to solve this, I'm going to have negative 8 over 2, which is negative 4. So the axis of symmetry is x equals negative 4. If we want to take it a step further, we could also solve for the vertex. I'm not going to worry about the sketch here in this problem, but if we're solving for the vertex, I'm going to take my original equation. We know that x has to be negative 4. We just solved for that. The axis of symmetry, it's going to go, there's going to be a line going through negative 4 on the x-axis. So we know that the vertex is going to be at negative 4 on the x-axis. We just need to figure out where it crosses on the y-axis. So to do that, I hope I don't run out of room here. I know that x is negative 4, so I'm going to plug in negative 4 for all those x's. So if I were to simplify this, I would get y equals negative 4 in parentheses squared is 16, plus 8 times negative 4 is negative 32, plus 15. So if we simplified this all the way down, we would get y equals negative 1. So the vertex, you're going to put the two together, would be negative 4, negative 1. Let's go ahead and solve number 2 as well. So we have x equals negative b over 2a. I'm going to solve for the axis of symmetry first because that's going to give us the x value, and we need that x value in order to solve for the y value for the vertex. So remember, we have a, b, and c. So negative b, so we have positive 10, so that's going to be negative 10 over 2a. Now be careful, a in this case, sorry, I'm trying to write small. A in this case is negative 1. So I'm going to get negative 10 over negative 2, which is 5. So the axis of symmetry is going to be x equals 5. And then taking it a step further again, I know the x values, I need to solve for the y values. So I'm going to plug in 5 for every x that I see in the original equation. So I'm going to get negative 25. Notice the difference there. 5 squared is 25, but there's a negative sign in front of it. So negative 25 plus 50 minus 23. So when I put those all together, I'm going to get positive 2. So we just figured out that the y value was 2, so the vertex is going to be 5, 2.